Welcome to video 1 of my van life game devlog. As you can probably tell from the title, after a nearly unanimous vote in the comments of my last video, the van is staying drivable. Not only that, but I made it better than ever. I'll talk more about that later in this video. Since the last episode, a ton of progress has been made. In the previous episode, I landed on the idea of a large map made up of smaller destinations, but once I actually started building these locations, they felt dry, disconnected. The cutscene of switching from map to map just kind of took away from the van life feeling instead of enhancing it, so yeah, I ripped that out. The game now starts on a single map with the option for us to expand more in the future if it makes sense. And I'm glad I did this because I started filling out the map and holy, was I not prepared. But to build that map, I tried a few different workflows and landed on H terrain. It let me iterate quickly while still giving me the optimization and art control that I wanted. Alongside that, I've been working on modular assets, some pieces that we can kind of just build up pretty much whatever we want. And there was definitely a learning curve, but once I had a few solid examples working, it became very clear that this is the right direction for the project. I've also been experimenting with materials and color palettes, and I've settled on a low poly pixel art style, mostly just because I love how this style looks, especially once you start to throw some like shaders on top of it. I mean, yeah, I love it. It might be a little early to lock the art stuff in now, but I do think it's important to get a rough idea as to what we kind of want to do here, because it's already shaping how I'm approaching my 3D modeling workflow, and having that direction early on has kind of helped with the rest of the models that I've filled out. Another big focus has been pushing physical interaction in the game. Since we're kind of working with this 3D physics objects idea, I kind of wanted to push that idea into as many interesting facets as I can. I added plants that grow. I added water, which has buoyancy. This lets objects kind of float and react naturally. And this opened the door to some pretty cool systems, because with floating water means we can have a fishing rod with a real physical bobber. So yeah, fishing is real now. You also can cook the fish, which works through proximity to fire by just putting the thing near the fire. But that means that with fire, we're gonna need fuel, and with fuel, we're gonna need wood, and wood can come from bashing tools like an axe against a tree. You can see where this is going. So far, I'm having a blast. But what's cool is now that you have this like wood, I thought, well, what if we just made like some 3D crafting system? And this lets us just build things directly in the world, which is pretty cool. And since we're now going to have this stockpile of just items laying around, I went ahead and added a store system, so that way you can kind of sell items within like a sell area, and you can buy items. The stock rotates each day, so once a new day is triggered, it will boom place new items out on the shelf. So there'll be random items for the player to come look at each day. Gives incentive for them to come check things out. I added a small little journal system to help the player track things they can do. I think it's extensible to the point where we can just utilize this for the entire story of the game, and we should be fine. So with all these ideas put into place, I kind of wanted to push a little further into more specific items that we can use to expand the idea of the van and what we can do with the van. And one idea that I really started to like was a ham radio, and this essentially would turn the van into some sort of reconnaissance vehicle where you can snoop signals from different locations. That idea was great, and it kind of exploded into, you know, about 2 months of me working on radios, towers, satellites, directional antennas, repeaters. And it's cool because you physically have to bring the antenna over and then aim the antenna towards the signal to get a good signal of it. And this was a lot of fun. You know, just messing around. And there's a lot of cool dialogue systems that we could do with this, and some really cool story elements that I've already kind of like jotted down to see what we can make out of this. So I'm excited to see where this can go. If you have ideas for things that players could do that involve a van and you want to see, I mean, definitely let me know. I'm open to all ideas. Let's see if we can make something cool, guys. I've also improved the UI, especially around interacting with 3D objects. As you can see now, whenever they pick up an object or hover over an object, there's a string of text that kind of shows you each of the different actions that you can take on the item. And one of those was examine. I've been playing a little bit more RuneScape lately, and I really like the examine feature that they had, because it gives things just a little more story and lore in the world, which is cool. So I added something like that similar to this one, just to give items more personality and flavor. And I did briefly start experimenting with 3D navigation agents, but that is an entirely different beast and probably a whole separate video. Audio is another area I've been digging really hard into. The default audio setup is fine, but adding like proper spatial audio would make a massive difference for a game like this.
Hey Joe, this is Tony. How you doing today? Hey, Tony, how you doing? What you been up to lately? I haven't heard from you.
And that covers most of the big changes. There were plenty of small fixes that I've changed along the way, but I'm gonna be honest, those probably weren't super exciting to talk about. One major issue I did run into was a large period of Vulcan driver crashes. It seems like no matter what I would do, I would get this ERR does not equal VK success is true. And this ended up with me ripping half the game apart while debugging, updating everything I could find, trying to update drivers, roll back drivers, studio versions versus game versions. Nothing really seemed to fix this. It seemed that there was a GitHub issue for it already, so at least it's a known problem. And I did take a jab at trying to look into it further. I downloaded the Vulcan SDK and tried to pull some logs, do my due diligence for open source software, but I didn't really get very far on it, and that was kind of more than I wanted to take on at this time. So for now, I did fix it by disabling Vulcan and forcing the engine to run in DirectX 12. Now for the exciting part, let's talk about the van. And this is where I introduce Van 2.0. This thing comes fully loaded with new and improved textures, fixed meshes, better stability, custom acceleration and braking curves, full 3D object interaction while inside the van. And when you crash, cargo goes flying. And my personal favorite, hanging doodads. Yes, imagine plants that dangle and sway while you drive. Oof. Man, I'm excited. I also thought that it'd be a fun idea to take the chair out from the base van mesh. And so now you can place the driver's seat anywhere you want. This led me to the idea of implementing multiple camera angles and perspectives. So now you have this. The hardest part wasn't getting all this set up. The hardest part was actually figuring out how physics can work with a vehicle body like this, and then making sure that they behave correctly during movement, collisions, and physics updates. And unfortunately, the physics engines in these games are great, but they're not perfect, so there will inevitably still be bugs. What can you do? As a side note, I also hosted a small pre-alpha playtest with some of the members in my Discord, and that was a ton of fun. And I was shocked that there was as few bugs as there were. I count that as a massive win. But yeah, I mean, that's where the project's at right now. There's still a lot of work to do, so I'm gonna get back to that. If you have ideas that you'd love to see in a game about van life, drop a comment below or join us in the Discord, let me know. And if you really wanna help, wishlist the game on Steam, link in the description below. Later.